There's a difference, in my opinion, between willpower and inner power. And willpower runs out. And inner power is a confidence, it's a posturing, it's a trust, it's like a knowing. And what happens when you develop your inner power around this, you feel just confident. And I think the greatest example I could give would be a vegetarian going into a steakhouse. And, everyone is going to say, like, you're in a steakhouse. And the vegetarian just gets stronger and says, I totally know that. And when the waiter says, we don't have any options, and the vegetarian, not that I'm saying you have to be a vegetarian, but this is just the example, right? The vegetarian postures themselves in a way that is like, this is how I eat. I'm not going to eat a steak because you're making me feel bad or you're bullying me or just because that's what's on the menu. And so inner power, when we know exactly who we are, there is so much strength in that.
Hey, fans and listeners, as the host of the Female Athlete Nutrition Podcast, I definitely want to spread my mission of using food as fuel, nourishing your body, making sure that we are preventing and also healing from disordered relationships with food, disordered eating disorders, and all the conditions that are very prevalent, body dysmorphia in an athletic population. It's actually really prevalent in an athletic population, which is why I talk about it so often. But I recognize that to be a female athlete, there's no one, type of person, age, sport, category. You might be an athlete, but not identify as an athlete. You might identify as an athlete, but be in a season of life where you're not necessarily performing or training at the same level that you used to or at all. So I think what I'm getting at here is that I've been trying to broaden some of my guests a little bit and, just invite a few other topics that maybe I've been scared to address in the past or haven't wanted to just because it doesn't fit my specific narrative. But that's not fair to you as a listener or a viewer to only give you my specific narrative. So I'm trying to broaden a little bit and engage in conversation where somebody might say something that is different than my narrative, but still adds value. With that being said, you may have picked up on that with a couple of my guests recently. And now it brings me to my guest today, who is a fellow dietitian. And I had a beautiful conversation with her. I really, really enjoyed my conversation. She sent me her book, This Is What You're Really Hungry For, 6 Simple Rules to Transform Your Relationship with Food and Become Your Healthiest Self. We're going to go into those 6 rules. I feel like I'm doing this intro and explanation because I know that I have a following that is sensitive to disordered eating. And I know that sometimes things like, do this rule with eating, drink X amount of water and chew your food thoroughly. I know how easily that can turn disordered. And yet I know that this dietitian, Kim, has helped so many people with her guidance, with her knowledge, with her understanding of people's behaviors with food. And you're going to hear that as she talks. And so what I just did in this episode is I kind of explained a few things of, well, in this population of people, these are some thoughts. And what's really cool is we were able to find mutual ground in it all. So anyways, I hope that kind of explains that I'm kind of intentionally trying to get a few different guests on while still staying true to my mission and what I believe is helpful to my clients and female athletes as a whole, but recognizing, there are some female athletes that are really struggling maybe with binge eating that I haven't addressed as much. I know I've had a few episodes about that or really, just battling with a couple different addictions, and food is maybe one reason that they are eating or aren't eating. And that comes up in my conversation with Kim about her work with people battling addiction and how that plays a role with nutrition as well. So anyways, I wanted to highlight this book because there's some people that this book will be really helpful for. And I wanted to give it a shout out and let you hear from Kim herself and recognize that at the end of the day too, she really wants people to have a healthy lifestyle. And I think you'll get that through her 6 rules that the end result is let's build healthy behaviors and habits around food and movement. So, all right, without further ado, let's just listen and you can form your own opinion to this conversation, but I enjoyed it. I hope you do too. And this is the right book for some people. So go out The links will be included in the notes to purchase or get more from Kim. Hello, fans and listeners. It's Lindsey Elizabeth Cortes, registered dietitian, sports dietitian, and your host of the podcast. I'm here today with another dietitian to have a wonderful conversation, Kim Shapira. Kim is a LA-based celebrity dietitian specializing in functional nutrition and nutrition therapy. She has over 30 years of experience. She has helped clients achieve and maintain weight loss through her private practice and as a coach for Trimly. She has also worked in hospitals, sports clinics, and addiction centers while also teaching at universities. Kim believes that health span is the goal, but life's challenges can derail individuals from their journey. Through her Kim Shapira method, Kim provides the necessary support and guidance to help clients achieve peace and happiness around food and rewire their values so they no longer worry about health, weight, and maintenance. She's the author of This Is What You're Really Hungry For: 6 Simple Rules to Transform Your Relationship with Food to Become Your Healthiest Self. So, as many of my listeners know, I am not one on the nutrition podcast to necessarily promote weight loss, because what I try and do with my athletes is promote fueling and nourishing. But Kim, I read your book and I've researched you, and I think you are the perfect person to touch on the subject of weight loss, because I know that you have such a great approach and healthy relationship with it. And I think what you're offering is needed and valuable. So I thought this is a good time to have a conversation about weight loss in a healthy way on this podcast. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I'm definitely excited to talk about that. Yeah. It's interesting the way you just put that.
Yeah. And I also, through reading your book, I just have to say, you were the dietitian for, or I don't know if you still are, but have a relationship with Kaylee Cuoco. When I say you're a celebrity dietitian, right? She's
Yes.
a famous actress, and I just think she's wonderful. She's so many people know her from 8 Simple Rules or The Big Bang Theory, but she's been in plenty more. But that is just, when I read that, I was like, oh, here's a cool dietitian. She's worked with famous people and actresses before.
Yes. And actually, I started working with Kaylee when my daughter was 3 weeks old from 8 Simple Rules. Yeah.
Wow.
We go way, way back.
You go way back.
Yeah. So we've had about a 21-year relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of street cred to start off this conversation. So my listeners are like, wow, that's really cool. I also want to share, when I read your book, I forget if this was like intro or chapter 1, but as I'm a dietitian too, and we're honestly, our training in our schooling, our education, it is focused on weight loss. That's just kind of, yeah. And that's what people assume. That's why I've struggled in my career. People assume you're a dietitian, you're going to put me on a diet to lose weight. Like, that's an assumption. That's not necessarily what I do, but I appreciated in your book that you got your degree and you were so excited, and you helped some of your clients lose weight, and then boom, a few months later they gained it back.
Yeah.
And I appreciated your honesty and vulnerability in that. And so that was in the beginning of your career. And that happened to me too. I put in the beginning of my career, follow this meal plan, make these recipes, do these calorie counts. And they do it for 6 weeks, 12 weeks, and then life happens and it doesn't last. And that's where I took a shift in my career. But I'd love to hear how that changed your approach to weight loss, like right from the start. Oh man, what happened? People just gained the weight right back. Why is that happening?
I mean, you're right about everything you're saying, and I'm just like shaking my head so aggressively. Yes. It is so true. We have the exact same educations, and I think now the education system looks a little differently, which I'm really happy to hear about some of the nutrition and dietetic programs. I would also say that we were taught about metabolic dysregulation. And I started my career because I wanted to be healthy. And somebody along my journey told me that food could make you sick or healthy. And I had always seen myself as unhealthy. And so that is the piece that I went for, is I want to be healthy. And in my mind, I thought everybody did. I didn't know that there was more going on. And so that was a turning point for me when I realized what I had set out to do had nothing to do with the people living inside of their bodies. And as I started kind of pulling back and recognizing kind of where I started and they started, and like where I ended and they started, I should say. And that it wasn't about me. And I had to work through my own things in order to be better to serve them is when it really changed. And for me, it was shopping is very much like food is for a lot of people. And I know exactly when shopping became a place to put my mind when my body wasn't comfortable. And for me, it was when I was 12 and I was driving to my doctor's appointment at UCLA, and I had had already 6 months of serious discomfort and pain and many, many trips to many doctors, and nobody could actually tell me what was wrong with my body. It was 1986. And on the way to UCLA, my mom said to me, "Don't cry, we'll go shopping." And it was this crazy moment where I then said, "Don't cry, but go shopping," and it was like I
Yeah.
latched right onto it.
Yeah.
And every moment from there became shopping's a good idea, or I need more of this.
You needed healing or support or help. You went to shopping.
When I was bored, when I was stressed, when I was tired, when I was lonely, everything in my mind lit up with the idea that shopping was a good idea.
Hmm.
And it was after I had helped my clients lose weight and they had kind of told me, now I'm going to gain the weight back, that I started recognizing the patterns that we all kind of had and that they were eating in the same way that I was shopping. Because this one particular client, like we had gotten her off of her cholesterol medications and her blood pressure medication. Like I had set out what I had intended to do. And
Yeah.
yes, it required weight loss, but more than that, it required metabolic regulation.
Yeah.
It required putting her body in balance.
Hmm.
And it really was such a bummer. But in the end, it wasn't. I mean, that's how most things are, right? Whatever challenge we're faced with kind of like helps us step into who we're meant to be. And so there it was. And then I started really recognizing it's not about kale. It's not about the food. It's about the reasons why people are taking action and they're eating when they're not hungry and when their body just doesn't need food and why they're actually becoming dysregulated.
Yeah.
So that's where I pivoted.
And that's so powerful to understand why people are eating. Because this can go,
Yeah.
I think, and we'll get into this more, but your example and in your work, what you just said is like, okay, well, why are people eating? It's not for their health, or it's not because
Right.
they're hungry. They're eating because they're bored or because they're emotional. I tend to have a lot of clients that might be the opposite of why is someone not eating? They're not eating because they're too stressed. They're not eating because they're sad. They're not eating because,
Yeah.
so it can happen kind of on either end of the
Yes.
spectrum where the reasons to eat or not to eat,
Yeah.
the reason behind it all, that's the issue more. And so, yeah, it's really fascinating. Like your view is like everybody wants to be healthy, right? And then you start working with clients and it's like, it's not always the want, but it's the behaviors around it that need to be
Yeah.
addressed. So, and sorry, did I cut you off?
Well, I was just going to say for many, many years, many parents would come to me with young children and they would say, my child is picky or they won't eat this or they won't eat that. And I would say to them, let's not call them picky because then
Yeah.
they can't be whatever they want to be in the moment. They're just stuck to this label. And also, it's not about the food,
Mhm.
it's about what's going on with their mind.
Yeah.
Understand why they're having any sort of anxiety or feeling overwhelmed here or a loss here. And then you're going to understand the root cause of why they
Mhm.
don't feel safe eating that food.
Mhm. That's really interesting. I've got little ones right now, so that just puts things like in perspective. Just that we see this in how they play too. So much with little kids, like interacting with food is playful and exploratory and creative. And so yeah, you need to be feeling in a safe place, a happy place, in order to express that
Yeah.
as well, right? Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, we see people who restrict as they're more anxious in nature, right? Where they feel overwhelmed. And so I don't want one more thing I have to think about. So I'm not going to think about it. Where on the flip
Hmm.
side, you see people who have suffered great losses who are like, I just need more things. I need more shopping. I need more food. I need more alcohol. I need more things, right? And that's where the behavior is coming from. It's loss.
Mhm. Mm. I think I read off in your bio there, you've worked at you've done some work with addiction centers too. So if you've seen this a
Yeah.
lot, the relationship between food and shopping addictions or alcohol addictions and then food addictions as well. And it's like, well, why is this happening? What is the emotional or mental
Yeah.
kind of things going on? What's going on in life?
We just want to feel good.
Hmm.
Every single one of us in every single moment, which is that feeling of what makes me feel better is so subconscious and happens so fast that there is no space. And like that's the piece that's like where I really love to work with people is in the
Hmm.
space between the thought and the action, you know?
Hmm.
Make that space.
Kim, are you a dietitian or a therapist?
Both,
I
my
know.
degree is in clinical, but human metabolism and clinical nutrition, but
Hmm.
we can't really get there. Like even when I talk about my rules and I say rule number 2, eat what you love, that immediately fires off fear of like, wait, I only love cupcakes and donuts, or I only love protein or whatever it is. And like,
Yeah.
they're not even paying attention to what their physical body needs or how their body responds to those foods. So they couldn't essentially be in a relationship with something that they think they love that is hurting them.
Yeah. That's so powerful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, you were talking about your rules there, your 6 rule,
Yeah.
and this comes from your book, your 6 simple rules to help people find their health and wellness. And I think one other thing though, I'd like to touch on before we kind of dive into some of those rules is also just knowing, because you mentioned why, the reason behind why people are eating. And for you, you want it to be healthy, but not everybody does. And here you are in LA, where I think that people get really hung up on how they look. And, you've worked with celebrities. So many people are chasing a look that they want to achieve or be an aesthetic. And I'd love to hear your input on that, on if that is a good enough reason why
Yeah.
to eat something, or is that going to result just like your first client many years ago where they gained all the weight back? Your reason why you're eating is how can you, well, let me first hear your thoughts on it before I
Yeah.
speak any further. Is that a good enough reason to pursue nutrition changes?
No, I would say it's super complicated when you think about it. And for those types of clients, I'm not the person for them.
Yeah.
Especially, let's say they want to lose 10 pounds to get on a movie in the next month. I'm not that person for them. So, generally speaking, if somebody comes to me and says, I want to lose weight, then I will say to them, actually, the goal is never weight loss. The goal is learning how to maintain
Mm-hmm.
your health. And the
Mm-hmm.
side effect of that actually could be weight loss if there is any weight that needs to be lost.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, we don't focus on weight loss.
I love that. So, and the reason I love that is because I love it because it's in line with my methodology as well, even though I think that, there might be different clientele and it's so hard. It's just so hard for people to hear that I always
Yeah,
say weight is an outcome. It shouldn't be the goal.
right. It never
So
lasts if it is.
it doesn't last. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a difference, in my opinion, between willpower and inner power. And willpower runs out. And inner power is a confidence, it's a posturing, it's a trust, it's like a knowing. And what happens when you develop your inner power around this, you feel just confident. And I think the greatest example I could give would be a vegetarian going into a steakhouse. And, everyone is going to say, like, you're in a steakhouse. And the
Yeah.
vegetarian just gets stronger and says, I totally know that. And when the waiter says, we don't have any options, and the vegetarian, not that I'm saying you have to be a vegetarian, but this is just the example, right? The vegetarian postures themselves in a way that is like, this is how I eat. I'm not going to eat a steak because you're making me feel bad or
Just
you're
because.
bullying me or just because that's what's on the menu.
Hmm.
Right. And so inner power, when we know exactly who we are, there is so much strength in that.
Yeah. It's totally different than willpower. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So thank you for kind of explaining that, because I was like, man, working in LA and celebrities, like how do you get them to know that there's something bigger and more important to strive for? And so you're pretty upfront that,
Yeah.
hey, weight loss is an outcome, it's not the goal. So
Yeah.
if we're pursuing all the right reasons, we find your inner power, and we're striving for a healthy, really foundation relationship with food, choosing foods that we want to feel and be our best selves, then weight loss or weight gain, whichever is the outcome,
Yeah.
really. And I see that with my clients too. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's the outcome. It's not the goal. So,
Yeah. I actually refer to it as a side effect.
oh, side effect. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, either
Yeah.
way, but it's like, it just happens. You don't have to worry
Yeah.
about it.
Sorry, I keep looking down because I'm just looking at my notes of some other things. Like I pulled out some things from your book that I found fascinating. We make 221 food choices every day.
When we have 60,000 thoughts, it's not very many, but for some people, it feels like a lot.
Oh, yeah. That's a lot of choices to make all day long about
Yeah.
food. Yeah.
Yeah.
What are we going to eat? Where am I going to get it from? How do I make it? What temperature? How much do I put on my plate? Should I add this? Like, it can just keep
Salt or
going.
pepper or lemon,
Yeah.
coffee or
Yeah.
water.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that's all day long.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, like, practicing mindfulness, incorporating it into your life
Mm-hmm.
and knowing, because I mean, mindfulness, the definition of it is to know where your mind is without judgment.
Mm-hmm.
And so many people that we probably both see have a lot of judgment around
Yeah.
some of the thoughts they're having. And what
Oh, yeah.
happens with the judgment is that I think of thoughts as trains.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have about 60,000 trains that come into the station every day
Mm-hmm.
in response to what we see, smell, feel, hear, or touch. And if we're triggered by food thoughts or somebody else talking about food or whatnot, our job is to stay on the platform and let the trains go by and to say, we're safe, I'm safe, I'm safe, to constantly remind ourselves, I'm safe in this moment, I'm safe, right? And it could even be, I have to pee and recognizing, oh, but there's a toilet just right around the corner. Just coming back to I'm safe as often as we can. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes in these 221 food choices, we don't feel safe and we hop into the train and the train takes us miles and miles away from where we were supposed to be. And so that's how we get off track. But the more that we practice seeing our thoughts as just a train, and our
Yeah.
job is to observe them, not to hop into them, then we can stay more
Mm-hmm.
rooted on the platform.
Yeah. And I saw this theme as you talk about as you go into your book and talk about your rules too. I saw that mindfulness theme in there throughout of, yeah, being non-judgmental with the thoughts that you have about food. And I think also non-judgmental with the actual food. I think you already said it on this podcast. Like, it's not even about the food. It's not
Right.
about the kale. Let's not
Right.
judge the kale. Let's not judge the cupcake.
Right.
So,
I agree 110% about that. In fact, I like to call all food a banana for a lot of people because people tend to become very mindful around a banana.
do they? Tell me more about this.
So if I handed you a banana,
Uh-huh.
and after you got over the weirdness of me handing you a banana, you would probably go right to your stomach to see if you needed it. And you would
Hmm.
non-judgmentally assess yes or no, and also safely put it on hold,
Mhm.
trusting that the banana isn't going anywhere.
Mhm. Yeah.
So a banana is safe for many people, and
Mhm.
people become very mindful
Mhm.
when they're handed a banana. And if we started thinking of all food like a banana, let's say lasagna, let's say, a
Yeah.
donut, and we handed you a donut instead of sensationalizing it. I haven't had a donut in so long. Of course, I'm going to have it. I'm going to have the whole thing, maybe even two because I don't get it, or, whatever it is. Actually, to check in with what your body needs in the
Yeah.
moment somebody hands you something or you're thinking about it. That's the mindfulness piece without judgment, trusting that that
Yeah.
donut will be right there if you need it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an interesting, like, activity to challenge your brain with. Because yeah, one of my first thoughts was like, okay, yeah, hand me a banana. Am I hungry? Do I want this? But hand me a cupcake, and I'm like, I just want to eat the cupcake because it's a cupcake, right? But I don't go through all the same steps. So what if we did that?
What if we did that?
We'd be a lot more mindful. We wouldn't just let the emotion kind of take over there.
Yeah.
Mm.
And for some people, after they ate the cupcake, their mind might jump in and really tell them how unsafe they were.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just a train that they can choose to get into or not.
Mm-hmm.
And their job is to not.
Yeah. I love that reflection point that's coming in after, because that's that judgment that you put on yourself after you eat it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I love where this conversation is going so far, because I think it's helpful for all people. And then I wanted to dive into your 6 rules that I believe, as a fellow dietitian, are helpful for many, many people. But I have a few like sprinkles that I might add in there for the athletic population.
Love it.
So let's do an overview, and then we'll dive into each one. We'll spend a few minutes on each one. So could you
great.
tell us your 6 rules to kick us off?
Yes. The first rule is to eat when you're physically hungry, to take your normal portion, cut it in half, and wait 15 minutes. And I just want to do a quick explanation, unless you
Yeah.
want me to wait. You want to wait?
No, yeah, actually, and what we'll do, we'll go over each step as we go, because then we can talk about
Okay.
it. So go ahead and explain.
Okay. So hunger for a lot of people, well, first, a lot of people don't feel hunger. That's either meaning that they're eating more than they need the meal before, or they're feeling anxious, or their body fat is too high.
Mm-hmm.
And so hunger is like having to pee. It's a natural sensation that tells us it's time to fuel.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I say take your normal portion and cut it in half is because people read labels, or because people assume that what their friend is eating is the same portion that they need. And we're never the same hunger one meal to the next or 2 days in a row. We have different activities and different things that cause different reactions. And we need to be in this moment to know how much we need today and now. If you and I went to a restaurant, we both ordered chicken parmesan, and your chicken parmesan was smaller than mine, you would probably be upset because we're paying the same price. There's like a lot of psychology that goes in there. And I think there's some personal responsibility that has to kick in around food to be able to identify how much do I need in this moment. And then we have to trust that we can have more. And if you have a background of overeating or restriction, you don't have that built-in trust. And so starting with half and waiting 15 minutes, it gives you that fail safe of, I'm now trusting it's right there. And also I'm having time to come back to my body to see if I need more. And this is all based on ghrelin and leptin, right?
Yeah.
So mindful practice with these 2 hormones that tell us when we're hungry and satisfied. Rule number 2. Do you want to?
Oh, yeah. Let's actually do it where I have sprinkle in some athletic, like with athletes. Like, so I agree with everything you said, where sometimes I deal with a lot of athletes who are not hungry because that's what high level exercise does to them, can literally suppress their appetite. And so sometimes I do have to, a lot of my clients, we still have to eat even when they're not hungry.
Yeah.
Which is a challenge. Have you ever had clients like that where it's like, but no, you do have to. And then definitely those who have been in a state of restriction for a long period of time, they do not feel those hunger cues. And so that's where I think working closely with a dietitian to really help guide you and provide you that kind of that input to say, no, you do need this, even though you're not feeling hungry. But for all the other people who, you've kind of you start being mindful of your hunger fullness cues. I think it's a generally good practice to give yourself, like, eat the food, maybe, pause halfway through, reassess where you're at. What I love about what you just explained and I wrote down was give yourself time and trust that you can have more. I actually appreciate the permission to have more.
Yeah.
I might add in one more thing. I see a lot of athletes that actually start with too small of a portion to begin with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it can be very different than the rest of the American population, but there are so many athletes that just start with too small of a portion, and it might be too small even compared to their peers, or really just too small for them. It might be the same amount as their peers, but hey, you're an athlete or you're a growing teenager, you actually do need more. So I still love what you just mentioned of give yourself time, and then if you're still hungry, trust that you can have more. You could go get more. you can grab a second portion if you need it. So, we're kind of coming from two different ends of the spectrum
But
here,
the
but I
same.
think the
But
underlying
yeah.
message
Yeah,
is the
now
same.
I wanna sprinkle because 'cause you're so right, and thank you. But here's and then I want you to come back to me.
Okay.
Ideally, I want everyone to eat 2.5 to 3 hours, and so for many people, they have to fake it until they make it, and so I have them set alarms to maintain that they're eating every couple hours, otherwise, it can slow down, their metabolism, and the
Yeah.
reality is when we eat every 2.5 to 3 hours, we're signaling to our body that we're actually safe.
Mhm.
When we go longer than that, it slows every function down and it makes our bodies reading that we're in the middle of a war or we're in a famine. And so that's kind of like what it means to fake it. Like every two and a
Yeah.
half to 3 hours, and maybe for an athlete, it could be like even 4 hours, but no more than 5 hours ever.
Mhm.
Should like you need to be consistent in eating. And stress is recognized as physical pain, and that could include hunger, and that could also include being too full. Stress also includes imaginary, like I'm worried about tomorrow's performance or what I'm going to eat next Thursday with my girls' night,
Mhm.
or the fact that I'm worried about the person walking towards me. And when those are the three types of stress we have. And at any point when we feel stressed, our body responds in under 10 seconds, tipping off the hippocampus, pituitary, and the adrenal, changing our cortisol, our hormones, and our insulin changes. And so we really need to be resilient, right? We need to recognize the physical stress. And so what I'm hearing you say is that high intensity workout, which is a stress, not a
Stress.
negative one, but a stress, any anxiety, that's a stress. When you don't feel hungry, you have to fake it, even so, but you have to show
I
up
love that.
grace,
Mhm.
meet yourself where you're at.
So
And
yeah, so that's a great, and another thing that I want my listeners to recognize is that even though you don't inherently work with like an athletic population, you even want them to eat every 2.5 to 3 hours.
yes,
Because I want my athletes to eat that often as well. And they're like, it's eating so much. You even want non-athletes to eat that often because it's
yeah,
triggering to the body, to the hypothalamus that you are safe, you are
that's
nourished.
it. That's it.
And it actually makes these eating decisions on regulating your hunger and fullness easier, I believe,
Yes,
when, yeah. Because, like, I know for me, if I go too long without eating, then I'm just like, when I'm too hungry now,
you're in
it's
trouble.
harder to make the decisions
Yeah,
because I'm past the point and now my brain isn't thinking as clearly. And now I want to eat all the food
fast and fast.
and
And
fast.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
And it's
like,
not as mindful.
right. And we're supposed to actually smell our food before we start eating. And this is a good thing for every one of your listeners to do, or anyone who is struggling with eating in the moment, to smell your food. So if we all pictured a lemon right now, just a really juicy, sour lemon, we should all have some salivary amylase that has been released into our mouth.
Hmm.
This means our body is ready to eat. So remember, when we're stressed and all of those things happen simultaneously, it's basically taken all of our digestive enzymes, blood, neurotransmitters, everything to run from the digestive part of our body to the extremities so we can run from the lion that has come into the room. We need to put it back so we don't have digestive distress. And
Hmm.
so just by smelling your food, you're making sure your body is ready for food. And it's really, really good for people who are anxious around food as a
A lot of my
practice.
clients are. So that's a good tip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can even think of pickles or lemons, anything you love, love, love that will
Hmm.
get your mouth watering. And then
Hmm.
I would also encourage everybody to chew their food longer than necessary. Because you and
Hmm.
I both know we need to chew, between 15 and 44 times per bite.
Hmm.
And we're supposed to swallow what we call a liquid bolus.
Hmm.
And everyone is like, yeah, that's not going to happen. And I'm like, but food is boring. And they're like, no, it's not. I'm like, but yes, it is. And
Yeah.
it's fuel. We need to break it down. How else do you think it's getting broken down?
Can literally help your digestion a little bit. Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah, but I
Absolutely.
like the reason behind this too. This is not a, like, I don't want this to come off as like a disordered thing. This is coming off as like
No.
to help your digestion. And a
Yeah.
lot of my clients, a lot of my athletes and stress around eating, they are having
Well,
digestive
they're
trouble. So
constricted, right? And so
yeah.
first you need the enzymes.
Hmm.
If you don't have the enzymes, how are you properly breaking it down? And some of the digestive stuff that we're talking about, is headaches, tearing eyes, runny nose, clearing your throat, heartburn, burping, bloating, nausea. What else is there? Stomach noises, smelly gas, airy gas, joint pain, fatigue, itchy skin, vaginitis. I mean, we're dealing with a lot of
Keep
things
going.
when
Yeah.
you don't smell or chew your food properly. It's,
Yeah.
our teeth are our first mechanical form of breaking down and beginning digestion. We only have chewing and then we only have our stomach. So
Hmm.
we do need to create this liquid bolus so then the
Hmm.
acid in our stomach could do its job.
Interesting. So that was, yeah, eat when you're hungry, honor your hunger, be mindful around food. And yeah, as we're eating, we might do some other little things like smelling our food and chewing our food to be more mindful and help aid in that digestion process so that we truly are eating when we're hungry and eating often. Sometimes you need to fake it till you make it. Eat
Yeah.
every 2.5 to 3 hours to get your system going. All right. Rule number 2.
So this is to work on all the disordered eating that could be out there. It's to eat what you love and to make sure the food loves you back. A lot of people throw around words like healthy or unhealthy, or I should, or I shouldn't, or I can't. And we're all individuals with different levels of inflammation, stress, needs. Everything about our bodies are completely the same and totally different. And so we
Yeah.
need to be in our own body to know what we need. And so it's still eat what you love when you're hungry and starting with half. There's a fail safe in not worrying about overeating or undereating when you're doing it every 2.5 to 3 hours and you're hungry. Then it doesn't feel so scary. So let's just say for fun, everyone who's listening to me, and I don't know this is true, heard me say, eat what you love. That means cake.
Yeah.
Not what I said, but that's maybe what somebody heard. Or maybe they heard cereal, or maybe they heard whatever it is they heard. They still need to know how that food is affecting their body. Now, there are allergies and there are sensitivities. Allergies, we know, don't go away, but sensitivities are temporary and your body can be put back in balance. And so it's really figuring out how the food is making you feel and if you really do love it.
Yeah. And giving yourself permission to eat the food that you love is important. So yeah, so many people are like, okay, then I'll eat cake all the time, but then I'm going to feel like crap. And then it's like, okay, so then do you really love it? Because do you love feeling like crap?
Totally.
Right. Or wait, if I do have cake, it actually did feel good. I had more energy. Okay, great. Eat the cake,
Totally.
and I
Totally.
actually find that a lot with my clients. They're like, all right, I ate ice cream last night and I went for an amazing run this morning. I ran so fast. I'm like, yeah, because your body needed
Yeah.
that fuel. Ultimately, it could have honestly probably come from anything, but it needed
Yeah.
the fuel and you ate what you loved. And so it was a win-win.
Yes.
But oh, wait, I ate such a big slice of cake or 2 slices of cake. And then when I went to go for my run this morning, I had GI problems. All right, like let's evaluate that. So I think
Yeah.
ultimately too, it's like eat what you love, but it's more what you love is more than just what it tastes.
Yes. Yes.
It's how you
Yes.
feel.
I
Yeah.
yes, I agree. That moves us into rule 3, which
Hmm.
is to eat without distraction. And we eat because the food is in front of us. We eat for emotional reasons, we eat for cravings, and ideally, I only want it to be for hunger, most likely. But, normal eating is also having birthday cake on birthdays or ice cream because there's a party or whatever it is
Yeah.
on
You don't
occasion.
have to be hungry for
Right.
that
It's
to
the
allow that.
every night at 8 o'clock I have ice cream is the problem. That's the
Hmm.
habit that we don't want. But, I often hear when I say food is fuel, a lot of argument that food is so much more than that. It's entertainment, it's comfort, it's joy, it's the enemy. And it's not actually any of that. It really is just fuel for our 53 trillion cells that need it every single day. And if you do think it's entertainment or you do think it's comfort, that's an opportunity for you to actually seek out real entertainment or real comfort, right?
Hmm.
Because the reality is the food that we love is actually boring because we got to chew it and we got to use it to fuel our body.
Well, yeah, and I think ultimately too. So I'm trying to think of an example. Like,
Well, people say they love food, but they don't want to be alone with it.
well, exactly. That's what I was gonna say. So
Yeah.
yeah. So you were go back to the cake example. food is more than fuel because you can have cake at a birthday party to celebrate. And so it's fun and it's social.
But if
Okay,
we
but
look up from the cake,
yeah, you
it's
remove the people, you
fun.
remove the birthday party. Yeah, then it's just cake, then that's different. The
Right.
fun is that the food is part of the fun. It is not the fun.
Right.
I think, are we on the
That's
same page there?
exactly
Yeah.
what I'm saying. And people like it's really interesting because even when you ask people to just be with their food, just you love it, just be with it, you know,
Hmm.
then they recognize very quickly that it's not what they want to be alone with. Most of the time they need to be with TV, they need to be with a book, they want to be with their phone. Yeah. The reward in eating is actually in the anticipation. So when we can recognize that it's more fun than whatever else is going on, then we can work on that piece.
Yeah. Well, and I wanted to bring up another like kind of controversial thing because I just want to be clear too. I've definitely said, food is more than fuel. It's fun, it's social, it's cultural, and it's part of that. I think is maybe the more correct way to say it. It's part
Yeah.
of culture. It's part of fun. But I also want to hit on what we're kind of talking about here is people will often talk about somebody's relationship with food. And I've said that phrase before. I think I even already said it on this podcast because it's kind of like it's what everybody else says. But you really start to think about it. Like you don't really have a relationship with food. A relationship is a two-way. Like you
Yes.
can love food, but food doesn't love you back. I
Or
think when you can, right?
or it does
uh,
give you back.
Well, through nourishment,
Yeah.
but the food itself, like if
Oh,
you're
I
like, I
see what you're saying.
love food, like the food itself isn't like a relationship is a two-way street.
Mm,
And I think that when you can, because that's where when we get into the emotional eating of like, I want this to make me happy. It's like
yeah.
it's not doing anything to you except providing you nourishment. It's
Yes.
not, it's not your partner or your best friend who's going to lift your spirit, heal your bad day, connect you
Yes.
closer to God. Like, it's just nourishment. It's
Yes.
just carbs, protein, fat, vitamins, and minerals. And
Water.
so I think like I don't know if I'm getting too philosophical
No,
here,
you're
but
100% right.
and that's why when you're saying you don't actually want to be alone with food, like you might want to be alone with your best friend to
Yes.
really heal your soul, but food doesn't do that because it doesn't love you back in that same way.
Right.
So yeah, so often I'm even one, I'll say we need to improve your relationship with food, but no, you really don't. You need to improve your relationship with yourself
Yes. I would agree with
is
that.
what you need to
I
do.
would agree with that, although I do think, I mean, I always say the food can love you back in a sense
I
when we
do
are
say that.
talking about digestive distress. I mean,
Oh yeah.
that is the physical response that, we're getting from food. If I'm
Hmm.
having something and I'm running to the toilet, that is how I'm referring to the relationship or even showing that the food in this scenario isn't loving you back,
Hmm. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So in that way, I do think that you have to watch how food is taking care of you.
It takes care of you through the nourishment. Yes. Kim, we're talking the same thing, but just
Yes.
slightly different languages, slightly different dialects. But and well, I also want to share with my listeners too. That's why I wanted to have you on because although words like weight loss and like, some things that you're saying, I think for the right person, this is the thing with nutrition too, and becoming somebody's dietitian or coach is it's all about what resonates with them,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, for some person, it's going to be eye-opening to think about how is food loving me back, and for another person it's going to be eye-opening to think wait, food doesn't love me back.
Right. I love that. Yes.
But either way, it's getting you to think about what is the food providing to me, what am I expecting out of it,
Yeah.
what are these thoughts going on, like we're getting to the same root cause either
Yes.
way, but which way of kind of putting it resonates with you more.
Yeah.
So that's why it's a helpful conversation because I understood when I read your book, I was like, I get this and this is gold, but I could also see how some people that I've worked with, can misconstrue it into a disordered thing. And that's why I was like, let's talk because that's where I do have to share so many of my athletic, fit, healthy athletes get into disordered eating because they're taking up like tips from the weight loss culture.
I know. I
And it's
know.
like, but it wasn't intended to be that way. And I know, like a
Yeah.
dietitian like yourself, like I know that you had good intentions when when you said, as we'll get to, walk 10,000 steps a day, we're going to get to that one.
Yeah.
Like, I know what your good intentions were. And so I kind of wanted to have this conversation to get some of my clients who are kind of sensitive to that to understand the bigger, more important message that you care about people's health and their wellness and their why behind choosing food. I think we're getting there on this conversation.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I'm loving this conversation. And I would also just put it out there that when somebody is watching a TikTok or a reel, most likely it's a commercial for whoever is doing it in a single moment in time. And nobody gets on there and is like, this is the worst moment. They're always doing it in their shiniest self, you know?
Oh,
And
yeah.
so to be very aware of like the smoke and mirrors, which people hear but may not see or really know to be true, but it is true.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we've gone through 3. Eat when you're hungry, eat what you love, eat without distractions. Tip number 4.
To get 10,000 steps.
Oh, that's number 4. I thought that was number 6. Okay, great. Yeah, so I think this one, like I'll just start first.
Go for it.
That's a great healthy habit for wellness. When I'm working with athletes, that doesn't necessarily have to be the priority if they're already like, one, they might hit 10,000 steps before 8 a.m. One workout already. Or it's just like, okay, you only hit 6,000 steps, but you did an hour-long lifting session, and tomorrow you've got a heavy session. Like, I just think we don't need to hold that to a rule. But who do you think that guidance is most helpful for?
Well, I think our human body is meant to be fidgety. And even as you're talking, you're moving your hands. And
I move my hands a lot.
Right. But people don't necessarily, they're not fidgety. They're not moving enough. And so even though it says 10,000 steps, it's really 10,000 movements. I really need people to move, right? We need our body. I was giving a talk on Monday night, and as we were talking, it had been an hour, and I was like, is everybody uncomfortable? We're sitting on the floor. Is everyone starting to get a little achy? Are their joints wanting to stretch? When we are sedentary, we actually are in more pain. We don't need to be doing high pressure, intense things all the time, but we're not meant to be inactive. Yet the average American only gets about 3,000 steps every day.
Mm-hmm.
And so we know through research that if we want to decrease our risk of sudden death, we need at least 7,000 steps. And many diseases, we need at least 7,000. And I have found in my practice over all the time that I have been working, in order to maintain your weight, it is about 10,000 steps. Now, there is a difference between progress and perfection. And we're not looking for perfection. We don't have to do it every single day. But if we didn't do it today, we just need to be a little bit more intentional to move our body the next day. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
Right. When we do move our body, it helps our digestion, our mood, our circadian rhythms, which is our sleep and our wake cycles. It helps our stress levels. It lowers inflammation. It's really beneficial. And especially it helps us maintain our weight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think ultimately the bottom line here is movement is healthy for people. And I also think too, like that research with the steps and the 10,000 steps and the 7,000 steps to prevent chronic disease, it is really fascinating to have that research. But there's other forms of movement that we maybe just haven't fully researched, right? Like steps is something that we can nicely research and calculate that. And I just say this too, for the person who's getting 6,000 steps, but also weightlifting, like, maybe that's really helpful for them too.
Yeah.
Because there's huge benefits to that. So, but I think this is good advice because you pulled out the average American only gets 3,000 steps a day.
Yeah.
I also want my athletes to hear that because I hear so many, well, I only did a 5-mile run today. I'm like, please stop. You're good.
100%.
Like the average person's not doing that. Don't, and I'm not saying we should always be comparing ourselves to that average, but I don't need my athletes always thinking we need to do more all the time. They've got that box checked, but your tip number 4, rule number 4 is great for the average American that needs to recognize nutrition's important and so is movement.
Yeah. And I want to add to your point that fitness is cardiovascular, strength training, endurance, flexibility. And we need a little bit of all of it in our life. And so it does count if you're lifting weights. It may not translate to the same thing, but it's just your lifestyle. Can you be an active person? That's all. Yeah.
All right. Tip number 5.
8 cups of water. So people, it really is 8 cups of water. Like maybe if you're an athlete and you're in the heat, you definitely need more water. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
obviously. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so maybe some Gatorade or some hydrating
Hmm.
substance. But yes, for the average American, for most people, we need 8 cups. We do
Yeah.
get water in our food, but I like to just drink additional water so your body doesn't have to do much with that,
Yeah.
doesn't have to break it down and pull it out. And if we don't drink enough water, we tend to see a little bit more inflammation, foggy brain, kind of feels a little fluish for us, and it compromises our liver and our kidneys. And especially with
Yeah.
people eating high protein right now and not drinking enough water, it can definitely, I'm seeing it all over the place, compromise your kidneys.
Yeah, I wrote some notes for this chapter. I just like the reminder of other benefits of being hydrated that people don't necessarily think about. Like, yeah, reducing your sensitivity to pain was an
Yes.
interesting one. If you have postnasal drip, which I do, it's like staying more hydrated helps thin that mucus to make that not so bad. Easier digestion, healthier teeth and gums. So that chapter was good. So yes, in the athletic population I work with, I'm going to strive for typically a lot more than that, and
Yeah,
also based on their sweat rate. So we can really
totally.
go crazy with hydration there. But once again, just similar to the 10,000 steps a day rule, it's like the average American is not staying hydrated. I see this
Right.
in my husband. I'm like, my husband doesn't even drink water. I'm like, please drink water.
Mine doesn't either.
I mean, what is it with these husbands? Or say I'm his wife, not his dietitian. I'll be
Exactly.
anybody
Same,
else's
same.
dietitian. But it's so awful. So yeah, the average person is not drinking enough water. So, but this is, and it's funny too. I think some of my athletes, they are drinking more, but some, at the high school and collegiate level, they're still not, especially at the high school level. Some of them aren't comfortable bringing a water bottle to school, or they
Yeah.
have all these rules and restrictions, no drinking, no eating in class. And so I would say in the high school and college age category, there are quite a few athletes that are not hydrated enough. And so we can think about the hydration needs from an athletic perspective with sweat rate, but also I liked in this chapter that reminder of just like
Yeah.
total body health, like reducing sensitivity to pain,
Yes.
and
Yeah. And
remembering
even
that. So
for the athlete, a good reminder that your hydration status will determine your performance.
yeah.
And so the more well hydrated you are, the better your athletic performance will be. Might be
Absolutely.
something
Yeah,
to consider.
absolutely. And endurance performance right away is like strongly correlated to hydration status. The moment you're dehydrated, endurance performance, because your blood has to work, your heart has to pump faster in order
Yeah.
to get the blood to your working muscles. But then also, even like when you think about your muscles and you think about like weightlifting and pushing and pulling, and like if your muscles are dehydrated,
Yeah.
I just picture a piece of beef jerky and like
Oh,
snapping
ouch.
it, right?
Ouch.
Like, ouch. Yeah, let's not think about, let's not have beef jerky muscles, right? All right.
Wow. That's a good
Tip
one.
number 6.
This one is to get 7 hours of sleep. So the average
Mm,
American gets about 6.5. And it's crazy that, I mean, kids need more. So when
yeah.
I say 7, we really need between 7 and 9, but we are really struggling with getting the 7. So I didn't want to put pressure by saying even
Yeah.
more,
Let's at least get that. Yeah.
but kids
Yeah. You,
even
you tell
more.
an adult to get 9 hours of sleep. It's just too far of a stretch. It's never going to happen, which
Yeah,
is crazy because everybody wants to sleep and nobody
yeah,
does.
it's impossible with like our lifestyles and
Hmm.
yes, it's really hard. And so you have to be in a habit because sleep is actually a habit. And so when you fall out of the habit, it just wreaks havoc on everything. So remember that sleep is a habit. And if you alter the time you go to sleep or the time you wake up, you're actually becoming jet lagged. And so we really want to be consistent with when we are tired and when we are sensing that melatonin is being released. Don't recommend melatonin as a supplement unless you're having like some sort of infection or fever or traveling. But our body naturally produces melatonin, which while it's being produced makes you drowsy. And then all night long, it goes into your cells and it detoxes them. So that's a good enough reason why you want to get good sleep. But some people have problems falling asleep, staying asleep, or waking up not feeling rested. And there's lots of reasons why, but try to eat 3 to 6 hours before you lay down. Try not to drink alcohol, especially if you're looking to have a good, nourishing sleep. You can fall asleep, but can't stay asleep when you drink alcohol. What else? just be in the habit of going to sleep at the same time, and also not hitting the snooze button if you can, because that allows you to go into a
Yeah.
new sleep cycle. And so
Yeah.
much.
I want to also bring attention to your last 3 rules. So sleep 7 hours, walk 10,000 steps, and drink 8 cups of water a day. So we obviously can see how these impact health, because they obviously do. But they also tie into how you make your first 3
Yes.
decisions around food.
Yeah.
That when you're well rested and when you're adequately hydrated and when you're moving your body, those also help you be more in tune with your body, your hunger and fullness,
And your
and like
motivation.
your motivation to make appropriate nutrition and food decisions for yourself. I know
Yes.
when I'm tired and sleep deprived, I am craving more food. It just
Yeah.
happens. I crave more food. I don't have the patience.
Yeah.
I'm not as present to even, make those. And then I'm too tired to work out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like they're individually on their own. Those rules help you be healthier on their own, but they also correlate into the decisions you make about food.
Yeah.
That I think is really important.
Yeah, I would agree with what you're saying. And I would also love people to hear the word rule and recognize that it's a practice. And the reason why I'm using such a strong word like rules is kind of like you wash your hands after you go to the bathroom, you brush your teeth, and like you really wouldn't like it if you didn't. Right. And so you had to
Yeah.
like make this a rule. So you practice it. So it just
Yeah.
became who you were.
Mm-hmm.
That's the goal.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of I was calling them rules and tips and just calling them everything.
Yeah,
but I like the idea of this is a practice, and that's what creates a healthy lifestyle ultimately. So, okay, Kim, thanks for diving into these, because like I said, I opened this conversation saying I don't often speak about weight loss, and you even shared, well, that's an outcome. It's the side effect. It's not the goal. But when you're taking care of your body, if weight loss is healthy or possible for your body, like that could happen. But same thing, if we apply these rules to be habits that we're building, that we're practicing for a lifestyle, that really would help anybody with any situation. And I think there's, that's why I just value this conversation.
Me too.
So people hear a rule, but know, oh, this isn't a rule that's implied to hurt me in this like diet culture type of way. This is applied to something that's for total body health, supposed to be helpful, and to hear it from you. So this was really good conversation.
Yeah,
Thanks for letting me kind of go back and forth on a few different topics.
Thank you. I appreciate all of your open-mindedness, and I love that we're just on the same page.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Kim, real quick, because I know you got to go, a few fun questions to close this out. I should do these in the beginning. But anyways, what's a food that you could eat every single day for the rest of your life and never be sick?
I would say cereal. Love it. Yeah.
What's a sport that you like to participate in yourself?
I think Pure Barre, or like a bar, like a Pilates.
Yeah, very popular right now and very difficult.
It's fun.
What about a sport that you like to watch and be a fan of?
I love hockey and basketball. Yeah, it's so fun.
Last question, since this is the Female Athlete Nutrition Podcast, is there a female athlete out there, either well-known or in your personal life, that you just are inspired by for any reason?
God, that's a good question. So many that I can think of, but currently I'm just thinking of my daughter's best friend, who is a softball player at Yale, and, just always just rooting for her,
Yeah. Oh, I love when it's somebody because it's like you've seen her grow up with your daughter, and she's made it to that level.
Yes.
Amazing. That's awesome.
I'm sad I have to hang up on you, but I need to go. This was so fun, though.
Take a big deep breath, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
See ya.
Thanks so much for listening, and I really hope you enjoyed that episode. Please help spread the message of empowering female athletes to be fierce, fit, and fueled by giving this podcast a 5-star review and leaving a comment. You can also help more female athletes by sending this episode to a friend. Head to lindseycortes.com for more resources, information, more episodes, ways to work together, downloadable guides, and ebooks. And if you're interested in becoming a guest on the show or have a guest suggestion, head to lindseycortes.com/podcast, and there's a form for you to fill out to get on the show. Hey, there's more resources on my YouTube channel, Female Athlete Nutrition, Instagram at female.athlete.nutrition, and private Facebook group, Female Athlete Nutrition. I think you get the point. I'm here to support female athletes by fueling better and becoming fierce, fit, and fueled. Most importantly, if you need help, reach out. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next show.